This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All right, there he is. How you feeling, Ira?
I get to talk to you after a win. I'm feeling probably better than the previous couple of Acura Pembroke Pines reports that we've done.
Yeah, no, but listen, that was a nice performance. You're missing several people, and Lowry came up with a hell of a performance. I thought Bam played well, and my favorite performance was Caleb. And you know, one of the things that I wanted to start with you on is while Caleb may not be looked at as a scoring machine, but I think he's kind of a rhythm player. And one of the things that when he first broke out with the Heat, he was on a roll and he was given a rhythm. He was given a certain amount of shots almost every night, and he was able to get in a real groove. And then I forgot now whether it was injury or somebody came back from injury or something that then derailed his minutes, and then he never really got back into the groove again. I think now because of the injuries, it's allowed him to get in a groove again. I don't want to lose this groove. I want to keep him in this groove because the one thing I like about Caleb, and I know that the coaching has to like this, and so does probably Pat Riley, he's such a complete player. And he helps you when he's on the floor, and if he's in an offensive rhythm, it's a glorious thing to watch because he's going to help you out defensively. He's going to facilitate. He's going to steal some balls. He's going to get some rebounds. He's just going to fill up the stat sheet. And I'm just a big fan of that kid. And I just think that if you can somehow give him the opportunity, and I know that there's only one basketball, but I just kind of feel that you've talked about this 100 times. You know, maybe we got to do the Ginobili thing. We got to say, hey, Tyler, we love you, but we need that energy off the bench. You're going to get the same amount of minutes practically. You'll probably finish games with us. But I love this whole thing with Caleb kind of being part of the initial group.
You know, I'm going to disagree with you and agree with you. I think what you said there about when he came off the bench, he had more opportunity. In a way, he's getting more opportunity now because there is no bench and everyone's injured. Because he didn't have to defer for 8 games with Tyler Hero until Wednesday. He hasn't had to defer the last 5 games without Jimmy Butler. Mm-hmm. When you're in a lineup that's so loaded, when you have Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, and Tyler Hero, he's the 5th wheel on a 4-wheel car in that starting lineup. But when he played off the bench last season as an energizer, the canvas was his. It was maybe Tyler Hero out there, but really with maybe Robinson and Vincent and Dedmon, and it was his opportunity. I think he so appreciates where he fits that he takes a back seat when Jimmy's in there, when Tyler's in there, when Bam is in there, and when Hero was in there. There are certain guys, they might deserve Big O to start, but they're better suited to play off the bench. And I think the Heat have 2 of those, and that's 2 of the issues this season. Number 1 is Caleb Martin as an energizer off the bench, different player. Number 2 is Tyler Hero as a create my shot first type of player, better off the bench. Why was Tyler Hero so good in the 4th quarter the other night? Jimmy Butler wasn't there. It wasn't a matter of having to look to Jimmy in the post, get him to the free throw line, feed Jimmy. He can do that. The Heat have the talent to be successful. But a lot of times it's like playing Tetris and trying to get those blocks to fit in with each other. And that's what the Heat have not achieved right now. The starting lineup has only played, the primary starting lineup has only played 7 games this season, not one since November 1st of Adebayo, Martin, Hero, Butler, and Lowry. But even then, Big O, it was just 3 and 4 to start the season. So it's not like there were dramatic results then. This could take a big pair by Eric Spoelstra to sit down and say, guys, we gave it a chance. But guys, I didn't plan on being 7 and 11, 8 and 11, maybe hopefully after tonight, 9 and 11. We have to get back. We have to work season when we were the number 1 seed. We got to get back to where players fit in their best roles. With Caleb, it's not a problem. You could move Caleb out. You could play Nikola Jovic for token minutes as a starter. With Tyler, it's different. He ended the season, I want to be a starter. Pat Riley said, earn your way as a starter. Tyler said, I went to camp and earned my way as a starter. I started the season. What have I done wrong not to be a starter? And again, it's not through any fault of his own. This is when all those stories Eric Spoelstra tells us about sacrifice and selflessness come into play for the greater good of the team. Are you willing to do that? And you know what, Big O? Basketball is a team sport. But the way basketball is played in this era with these contracts and these endorsements, it's also very much an individual sport. This may be the hardest part of all of coaching for Eric Spoelstra and others, to get players to fit in a role they see is better for the team, but the player might not see is better for the player.
So it's a hell of a dilemma right now, and I do worry about still if they have enough power in that rotation. And I know it's not necessarily a game of power, but I still think the rebounding is going to be needed, especially against some of these teams that are high-powered offenses. You don't want to keep giving them on nights where you give them a second and third chance, and that's what's going to end up burying you. So I still worry about that. What's the latest with Jimmy Butler, by the way?
I got to say I'm shocked because, again, this is just being discussed as soreness and discomfort, not as a quote-unquote injury. On the injury report, there's nothing there. There's no official wording of it. It's not a torn this or a bruise that or a strain or a sprain of something. It's just discomfort. I've always thought if you just have discomfort and your team is losing, you deal with the discomfort and you get on the court. Now, you, Big O, have spoken all along about the older roster, about Kyle being 36 and Jimmy being 33, and you have to preserve them. You've also spoken about Jimmy getting a 5-year extension with 3 more years on it. You're going to pay the guy. You need the guy to be out there. This is the push-pull right now. I think some of it has to do with the opponent. You can get away without Jimmy Butler against the Wizards. We saw that a week ago Friday. They got away with everyone, and they still were in overtime. And honestly, they were up 5 points with like 36 seconds to go in regulation. Yeah. Should have won the game. Yeah. You got away without Jimmy Butler on Wednesday, even though it went down to the wire. So you probably can buy another game. But I will tell you this, Big O. After tonight's game, or whatever you want to call the arena, on Sunday, at Atlanta Hawks, on Wednesday, at Boston Celtics, on Friday, at Boston Celtics, the following Monday, at Memphis Grizzlies. Without Jimmy Butler in the Heat lineup against Atlanta, Boston, Memphis, it's completely different than him sitting out, even against Minnesota and against Washington. So maybe today is the last day of the sort of, okay, Jimmy, we'll let you have the time you think you need. You've had more than a week to rest the knee, but now we're at critical mass. Because Big O, even if they win tonight, and they go to 9-11 at the 20-game mark, the de facto quarter mark of the season, you still have, ground to gain. You have to go at least 2-2 on that trip, I would think, to come back home. Okay, softer schedule, Detroit, San Antonio, Orlando, you can get over 500. But this reminds me of when they went out on the last trip. They beat Phoenix. Hey, we're great. We're 500. We're going to make our move. And then they lost all 4 games. So right. I think Jimmy needs to suck it up. And like Eric Spoelstra said after that game in Minnesota, hey, if you can only give us 20 minutes instead of our usual 30, give it to us. If you can give us 12 minutes instead of our usual 20, give it to us. They'll need some form of Jimmy Butler to be competitive against Atlanta, Boston, and Memphis.
Interesting stuff, man. By the way, this whole thing with the arena, what are they going to do with the name finally?
Well, again, they get paid in advance. So if they take the name off, then they're to a degree, the county is breaking their agreement for the money already received. I believe the next payment is due in January, but this is a very moral and ethical dilemma also. That right. If you knew someone was involved in what apparently is being investigated as a criminal enterprise, do you want to be associated with it? In other words, before Bernie Madoff was convicted, he still was charged and it was apparent what was going on with this Ponzi scheme. Would you have wanted to remain Bernie Madoff Arena because he made the donation, or in this case, the sponsorship? No. I think that's where FTX Arena is regarded with the county. It's just not a good look right now. People have been cheated out of millions and millions and billions of dollars by this scam because of what went on, with an operation out of the Bahamas, and they want to get that scrubbed. But if they scrub it now, they also scrub the dollars. And all of a sudden, when you're in bankruptcy and those dollars have to return to the bankruptcy court, you're never going to see it again. And that money was being used to fuel a social program, an anti-gun violence program in Dade County. So it's a real dilemma. The ethical part of you says, scrub that name, get the sanding machine out on the court before tonight's game. But the reasonable part of you says, but we're not in a position to give up that money either. And again, at Big O, you can't just lose one title sponsor one day and have one up there the next day. It's a whole negotiation, like when they went for American Airlines. Sure. Look at the Panthers. They don't have one. Right now it's FLA Live Arena. Look at
they could call it Heat Live. They could call it Heat Live Arena too if they want to.
They could, but to get a new sponsor for actual real money takes a while. Why did it take the Marlins like a decade before they became
but they're not the Heat. Come on, let's not. There's a lot of teams. There's a lot of corporations that would love to partner themselves up with the Miami Heat. That's a great organization to partner yourself up with and be a title sponsor. The Heat, I think, will have no problem finding a title sponsor. The Marlins, well, that's a whole different ballgame. You don't really win. You don't really do things to represent that name in the right way. You're not going to be in the playoffs. You're not going to have packed houses. The Heat, dude, I was at the Suns game the other night. I was sitting there in the lower bowl. It was a fantastic atmosphere, dude. Sure. The place was packed in the middle of the week. It was great.
But the problem is the deal is negotiated through the county. So there's only X amount of Heat influence. The county's looking to get their dollar. The county felt they were not getting their best share with the previous agreement. Then American Airlines stepped aside. So there's a push-pull. And as you know, Big O, when government gets involved, it's never simple. It's never business. It's always something more also. There's a political angle there also.
Although she sounded, and I'm talking about Mrs. Cava, I think, is it Cava, her last name? She sounded pretty like she was dead set on getting rid of that name off the arena. And I get that they need the revenue, but the problem is that's such an embarrassment right now. And there are so many people that unfortunately lost their money.
I agree, and that's why I don't refer to it. And if you notice my stories of the Sun Sentinel, I say the visiting Wizards, a Heat home game on the Heat's court. I believe the Heat broadcast is using the Heat's house right now. Everyone's trying to distance themselves, but every time that camera pans back and forth, FTX Arena, you can't deny it. Look, they got the visibility because they spent the money, so they were on the court, but now you sort of wind up with the embarrassment because of that. But if you wash it off right now, there's a financial implication also. And there's a legal implication also. You have to play it both ways.
If they would have listened to me, if they listened to this show, I told them a few days before they closed down, I said, get your money out, dude. Get your money out. Oh, God.
Maybe we should go the other way. And instead of all these deals Big O has with Acura, Pembroke Pines, with RedRecovery.com, how about the Big O Show Arena?
There you go. Now that would be that. The Heat would never lose. They would win.
There you go. And I got to tell you one more thing. I was in the airport the other day, as you remember, in Cleveland doing the show. And I told the guy who was sitting across from me at the airport table, I apologize. I'm going to be a little loud. I have to do a radio segment. He says, no problem. I'm just reading email. So I do the show with you, and I keep saying Big O, Big O, Big O. Remember, we're in Ohio.
Okay.
And I get done, and the guy goes, wow, was that Oscar Robertson? And I'm like, yeah, not exactly. Sort of, but not exactly. That was the Cuban Oscar Robertson. And I went that way. But he was very impressed. For 20 minutes, all he kept hearing was Big O, Big O, Big O.
That is awesome. That is fantastic. I love that. Marcel, by the way, is walking the streets of Detroit. And he goes by this store. And on the TV, he hears his voice. And they're actually watching our game. They're actually watching our show after the game against the Lions. And so it's like the guy then sees Marcel and goes, "Hey, that's you." So somewhere in Detroit, they were watching our show. How about that? So it's getting around, man. It's getting around. The show's gotten around. We're blessed. That's for sure. What do you think about tonight?
Must win. And I know it sounds weird that a game against the Washington Wizards must win, but we have to wait to see. Bradley Beal's questionable. He didn't play on Wednesday. Obviously, in a game that's a 4-point game, 2-point game, Bradley Beal can make a difference. We'll have to see on that. We still have the Heat injury situation. Obviously, Jimmy's out. You have doubtful with Max Strus and Duncan Robinson. So you're probably going to need maybe a little bit more from Tyler Hero. You got to get this one. You got to get this one, Big O, because what is next? Atlanta, Boston, Memphis. That's going to be a brutal trip, just like the last trip was. You can't afford another 0-4. You lose this one, and you go 0-4 also, and all of a sudden you're 7 games under 500. That's a mountain to reach by midseason.
You good with the Patrick Beverley suspension?
Yeah, and again, I think that's the recidivist fine. And a guy like that who can be a danger to his fellow NBA players, you got to come down hard and send a message. This wasn't the first time. It wasn't the second time. Probably not the third or fourth or fifth time either.
No, it's that's the problem. He has that reputation, and man, you just can't you can't put people at risk,
Yes.
and there's a lot of money involved.
You can
And you get DeAndre Ayton
Yeah.
injured, you set that franchise back big time. And let me tell you, I've always been a proponent of the dirty hit guys. They need to be suspended as long as whoever they injured is out. And if
Right.
you injured some guy that's out for 2 months, well, then your suspension.
Well, that's the Nikola Jokic thing last year with Markieff Morris. And when you issue the fine and the suspension, you don't know how long it's going to last. And not only did it impact Markieff Morris that year, but based on him not playing, you can make an argument that almost impacted his career as well.
Yep, no doubt. Follow him on Twitter at Ira Heapy. Catch his work there at the South Florida Sun Sentinel. Ira, have a fantastic weekend, my friend. We'll catch up on Monday.
Actually, I'll catch up on Tuesday if you remember. I'm traveling to Boston. Tuesday from Boston, Beantown. I'll bring a little nice cannoli from Little Italy. It'll be good for both of us. Thank you, Oscar Robertson. I appreciate it.
You got it. Thank you, Ira. Appreciate you. All right, good stuff there. That is our look around the Miami Heat.
This is the Big O Show.